Hey everyone, in this video, we just wanted to do a quick talk about trans athletes in sports, particularly trans women participating in female sport leagues. And so I guess the best way to start this one is to get this out of the way. So neither of us are transphobic.
Nope.
It's actually rather concerning that
you have to assert that.
You have to state that from the beginning, because having any open discussion about the scientific literature around the athletic capabilities of trans women compared to females is can be interpreted by some people as transphobic. It's similar to,
women, where you talk about women's strength compared to men. Like, some people think that is like crazy.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I just think talking, like, there's nothing offensive
like
about talking.
Some women will be like, I can do everything a man can do. You can't tell me that. Well, no, sweetheart, you can't. I'm sorry. Like, you're just not biologically built that way. Like, it's a reality that.
I mean, to an extent, yeah. My concern is like, we can't even talk about data, like scientific evidence and data, without people finding it offensive, which is weird, right? It's like, hey, I want to talk about, the health risks of obesity. Oh, you're fat shaming. Not really. Like, we're having a serious conversation here about, the health consequences of carrying around an excess of fat tissue. Or, it's no different than saying, hey, let's talk about, some of the things that happen as we age, like immunosenescence and sarcopenia. And it's like, oh, you must be age-phobic. You hate old people.
Or
what? No.
For example, like in my cancer piece that I'm writing, right? I call myself out for coping with wine through my divorce, right?
Yeah.
And how it probably increased the probability. Is that shaming me? No.
It's just.
But someone else might have the perspective of that it's shaming them, right?
Yeah. I think people get.
Shame is internal. It's not, they try to fucking place it on other people constantly. And this, I'm talking about trans people, like, or people that say it's offensive to trans people to talk about the science.
Yeah.
Like, you try to place your offense on someone else.
Yeah.
Instead of looking inward.
Yep.
And saying, why is this offending me? It's just data.
Yeah. Yeah. The point is we're just going to talk about the scientific evidence in this video. Like, that's it. There isn't going to be anything, transphobic or anything about it. Now, to get into that data, there isn't really a lot of it, right? So we have a handful of studies that have looked at things like grip strength, and all of those show that basically when you're a trans woman and you have done like gender reassignment surgeries or gender-affirming hormone therapy treatments to become more woman-like, because you, I guess we should get terminology out of the way, right?
Yeah, it's the difference between sex and gender identity.
Yeah, so let's start there. Male and female refers to biological sex, right? It's based on your reproductive organs. It's, when you are born, with very, very few intersex exceptions that are an exception to the rule, you are born either a male or a female. Now, that's your sex, and that's different from your gender identity.
Down to chromosomes, right?
Yeah, like, that's a huge part of it.
It's not really debatable.
Yeah, it's just part of your DNA. Now, that's different from gender identity, which is, you might be a male, for example, but you identify as a woman. And then you undergo gender reassignment surgery, gender-affirming hormone treatments to make yourself more feminine, because you identify as a woman. And that is a trans woman. It is a biological male who identifies as a woman and
is taking the steps
to try and become more woman-like, right? And so that's what our focus is should these trans women compete in sports against
biological women?
Yeah, against women who have been female their entire life. from the point they were born. They are female, right? And the answer is, at this point in time, no. And that's not a transphobic statement. That's just based on the data we have, which suggests that even as far out as 2 years after using gender-affirming therapies, performance advantages are maintained. Some are, right? So for example, running speed. They retain an advantage. They're about 12% faster.
Isn't this even occur with like the slowest of the men, like the men that would lose the race against other men?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's
I put
been
it simply like that.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, let's put it this way. So there's been news reports of men, for example, who placed 200th in their running event. They identify as a woman and now they place first. There's reports of Olympic gold medalist women in a host of track and field events that involve running, where their best times are beaten out by like the top 10 high school male athletes. There are clear differences between males and females when it comes to athletic performance, with males being superior in terms of their physical capabilities and sports performance. That's what the data shows. Now we have data that is continuing to accumulate, showing that even when those males transition to become women, they are trans women, they retain many of those performance benefits. One of them is the running speed. Even after 2 years of using gender-affirming hormones like suppressing testosterone, taking estrogen, etc., they're still 12% faster. To put that in perspective, the difference between first and 25th place in a 4x400 meter sprint amounts to about 2.1% in terms of the speed. So these trans women would theoretically just wipe the floor with females when it came to running events.
Which this entire concept is what pisses me off, because we have worked, I am a woman, and we have worked fucking hard to get our own division. Like, we were not allowed to do this just 50, 60 years ago. Why are we now being discriminated against?
Well, that's a huge issue here, is that...
But no one wants to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
No one does.
Well, that's the problem, is that... So let's come back to that. And let me just say this briefly. So that's running speed. We also have data showing that grip strength, when you take males that were in the bottom 50th percentile in terms of their grip strength, then they undergo gender affirming therapies and become trans women, they are now above the 95th percentile in terms of hand grip strength compared to females. So, and that's after 2 years. So they maintain their grip strength. And we have at least one study showing that they also maintain their quadriceps strength when measuring the maximal amount of force they can produce doing a knee extension exercise. We don't have any data on things like 1 rep max, bench press, squat, deadlift, whatever. And we don't have any data on, their ability to produce explosive power. So if you imagine combat sports, things like punching and kicking.
Who's that one that's smashing in skulls of women?
Oh, I don't know her name. Fallen Fox, I think.
And she's fucking proud of it.
Yeah. So that's
a character issue. That has nothing to do with being trans. Like,
yeah,
you're okay with smashing in skulls of women.
Yeah.
Like, when it's been shown, or it hasn't been shown yet, right? But
yeah. So that's the issue. That's central issue, is when you look at data and you're like, should we let them compete against biological females?
It's too premature to throw them in there.
Exactly.
And people are getting hurt.
Exactly. The data we have suggests that they retain performance advantages for at least 2 years. We need more data to determine when the effects fade, if they do at all. But for at least 2 years, they maintain quite significant performance advantages. And in other areas, we don't have any data at all. So at this point, it's completely premature to mix them, because what data we do have suggests that they have an unfair advantage against females. And there's still holes in the research, but there's no reason to believe they wouldn't have advantages in those areas too, because being a biological male through puberty and most of young adulthood is going to have other things like changes in, your bone and skeletal structure, biomechanics. It's going to change your bone mineral density. It's going to
fast twitch and
slow twitch muscle fibers. Like,
there's things we don't know. And I'm kind of on the side of, we've worked so fucking hard to get women's rights that it's a very touchy subject.
Well, when people want to come into it and say, well, if you don't let them in, you're discriminating against them. The response is, well, why is it okay to discriminate against females? Like, why is it okay to discriminate against one group in order to favor another?
Who gets to make that judgment call?
Yeah, exactly. Now, should trans women have to compete against males?
No. I don't think so.
Yeah, no, they shouldn't. And if we're going to have more and more trans women in sport.
Look at the influx of the society. Like, we need a separate division. There will be
That's what I was going to say. Why not just give them their own division?
It's becoming more socially acceptable for people to transition. And so I think that there is going to be enough to have their own division.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, because then they're competing against others who are in their same league, right? Males against males, females against females, trans women against trans women, and possibly also trans men against trans men, right? That's not discriminatory at all, and that seems pretty fair to everyone. And that's, also what the evidence suggests is probably the best route of action at this point in time. But it's certainly premature to be mixing. And it's also discriminatory against females to be mixing. Like, you train for 10 years to become an Olympic gold medalist, and you get beat out by a guy who placed, in 200th place or whatever, who decided to transition. And then after a year, they take first. That's not fair.
Yeah, I just don't understand people's arguments at all. Like,
yeah,
it's not, you would have to do some serious mental gymnastics to make it.
Well, let's do some analogies. Would it be fair for, a heavyweight, like fighter, whatever, a heavyweight, to decide that they want to go into the ring against a lightweight and win the gold medal in that weight division?
No one
says
that.
Why? Well, because there's clear biological differences, right? They're bigger, they're stronger, so we have weight divisions for a reason. Similarly, when you think of something like powerlifting, you have your whole masters division for older athletes. Why? Because older athletes are not as strong. They have worse joint health, etc., compared to younger ones.
It's a biological
difference.
Truth.
Yeah, it's a biological truth. They cannot compete on the same level. And in order to make it fair, you have to have these divisions based on biology. It's the same way why males and females are separated to begin with, because the bottom line is that males are superior athletes to females. And that's not a sexist thing to say. That's just the nature of biology. Does that mean women cannot be great athletes? Oh, fuck no. Women can be amazing athletes. And, the women that are athletes can mop the floor with, like most men in existence, just not the men that have done the same training that they have, because biology has wired them up to have greater adaptations and to be physically superior. There's an evolutionary reason for that. Men were the hunters. Like, that's just the nature of biology. And, we need to be able to have these discussions and acknowledge these realities without having people lob around inaccurate claims of sexism and transphobia and all that other stupid shit.
It's intellectually lazy to jump to that anyways. It's because they can't form a logical argument.
They have a belief system and they want others to believe in that belief system, even though they don't have data supporting it.
And so no one wants to be transphobic, like no one. And so once you throw that out there, everyone shuts the fuck up.
Yeah.
Which is dumb. You're going to use your fear tactics to control other people's arguments or inquisition.
Yeah. Well, this rant could go on forever, but I'm going to cut it off here. I think our point's made.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you like the content of this video, then awesome. That's what we're trying to do. Please share this video around, get the word out there that, you know, biology matters. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.